This NFL Week 16 Player Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code MACHINE to get a 50% deposit bonus of up to $1,000. We're also brought to you by Rebet, a new sportsbook available in 45 states. Download Rebet in your app store and use promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit match of up to $100. We're also brought to you by Rhythm, the leader in data-driven picks and props. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And we're also brought to you by the SGPN College Football Playoff Challenge. It's free to enter and a grand prize of $1,000. Go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/CFB to enter today.
And taking a shot to ground downfield. He makes the catch, and he gets in for the touchdown. The catch is made by Calvin Ridley.
Wilson, what as he throws deep downfield. It's going to be caught by Metcalf.
Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. NFL Week 16 kicks off on Saturday. At least the weekend games do, I should say. We had a pretty good game last night between the Broncos and the Chargers. We'll get into that game momentarily. But joining me here, of course, to help me break down the NFL Week 16 player props, got my guy here with me. It's ChrisBeCappinn. Chris, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
I'm doing good, I'm doing really good, man. No complaints at all as we inch a little bit closer to the holidays and a little bit closer to some holiday sports as well. This is, the exciting time of the year where we get NFL on Saturdays. Is one of my favorite times. So super excited to jump into it with you and glad to be here on this lovely Friday.
Yeah, there's a lot of sports going on this weekend. Obviously, we've got college football bowl games. We've got NCAA basketball action going on. Of course, the NBA as well, NFL, NHL. So just a really good time right now with sports going on, and hopefully to fill the pockets of our listeners with hopefully some more winners. Last night, a 34-27 victory for the LA Chargers over the Denver Broncos. Chargers improved to 9-6, increasing their playoff chances in the AFC this week. Or sorry, I should say this season. As far as our player props went, did go 2-1 overall. Unfortunately, my best bet didn't get there. I did get hooked on Justin Herbert pass attempts. The completions did get over, but he finished the game with 31 attempts, 23 of 31, 284 passing yards for Herbert, 2 touchdowns in that game, along with an interception. He also ran the ball for 28 yards on 8 carries. 2 winners I did have. We talked a lot about Stone Smart. You like the under on his receptions. That got there. He finished the game with 3. And I had his longest reception to go over. He had a long reception of 19 yards. And then I had Kamani Vidal to go under 7.5 carries. That prop ended up with 5 carries only for Kamani in that game. So pretty good night props for me. Unfortunately, the best bet didn't get there. But Chris, how did your player props turn out for you last night? I know we had the one winner there with Stone Smart, but how'd your other ones turn out?
Yeah, best bet winner, and that's what I really needed, Stone Smart. And I was a little scared because you went in, I think, to halftime with 2 and maybe even 3. I can't remember, but I know he had 2 pretty early. Then he got the third one, and I was like, man, we need him to stop catching passes. Like, please stop looking his way. And I saw McConkey start, catching more passes. So that was a winner. Roll with you on the Justin Herbert, but I talked about completions going under 21.5 or the pass attempts going up and over, and both of those ended up being losers anyway. So I lost there. Was hesitant on Gus Edwards. Glad I didn't pull the trigger. He finished up and over the 34.5 rushing yards that we talked about. He ended up with 64, had a long rush of 43. So he went up and over this number just with that one rush. So overall, not too bad of a day because I did hit Stone Smart, but yeah, definitely got to do a little bit better this weekend.
Yeah, best game of the season by far for Gus Edwards. 14 carries, 68 rushing yards. He had 2 touchdowns in the game there as well. But was a really fun game for the AFC West matchup here. So we'll turn the page here to the weekend NFL Week 16 games. Before we do get into it here, Chris, let me just remind everybody there's still time to get into the college football playoff challenge, the first annual over at SGPN. You pick sides, you pick totals for every game with a chance to win a $1,000 grand prize. It's free to enter. Just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/CFB. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/CFB. All right, let's get into it here for the week 16 weekend games here. Chris, I'll let you lead it off here. Let's start with our quarterback props, and we'll work our way from there. Where are you taking us?
We're going to the Buffalo and New England game. This was one that was on my short list last week. I didn't get to the window with it, and I'm kicking myself, of course. This may be just as auto as this guy's just ability to score a touchdown. If it's Josh Allen, longest pass over 36 longest completion over 36.5 yards. It's a big play offense. Like they just complete big plays, and it happens multiple times throughout the game. I was going back, looking through the game log for Sunday when they went into Detroit, took that 14-point lead in the first quarter and never looked back in that game. Josh Allen has actually hit this number. I hadn't really been on my radar, but he's actually hit it. I think I told you last week it was about 80% of his last 10 games. It's 80% of his last 5 games. He's averaging a long completion, for 45.5 yards. The hit rate on the full season is 9 of the last 14. And he gets a putrid Patriots defense. They really struggled in the red zone and against big plays in general. They're allowing, 32 red zone touchdowns, which is tied for the third most in the NFL. We talk about it. Josh Allen has a ton of wide receivers, a ton of weapons. He's a proven deep ball thrower. Patriots defense has shown a lot of vulnerabilities to explosive plays. And Josh Allen has accounted for 28 of the red zone touchdowns this season. His ability to be able to stretch the field, I think, makes this a really, really good look. So I talked about 8 of the last 10. Last week, it was a 64-yard completion in the Detroit game. 2 weeks ago, it was a 51-yarder against the LA Chargers. San Francisco, 39-yarder. He did stay under with only a 30-yarder in the Kansas City games, but before that, 44 against the Colts, 63 against the Dolphins. I mean, it's just big plays all over the field. Completion percentage sitting at about 63% over the last 10 games. He's passing the ball 33 times per game, 12.5 yards, a little over 12.5 yards per completion. And the Bills are doing a pretty good job of trying to, keep an even balance. But even with that said, they still passing the ball 55% of the time. So I love everything about Josh Allen this week, up against, a Patriots team that is not quite what we are used to from the Patriots side of things. So give me Josh Allen up and over his longest reception. I think he throws a 40-plus yarder this week again.
So you're saying he's having an MVP year, is Josh Allen right now, the runaway?
Just a little, just a little bit, if he's in consideration,
Minus 900 currently over on DraftKings for him to be the MVP this season of the NFL regular season. So, he's just having an incredible year for the Buffalo Bills. And you mentioned the numbers have just been really popping out for Josh Allen this season. Not only his ability to throw the football, but the rushing yards have been there for him as well. So, it's been a great season for him. And I think that continues in this game here against the New England Patriots. Possibly a letdown spot after all the traveling that they've done over the past couple of weeks here. But again, it's just this team is number one, possibly still vying for a number 1 spot in the AFC. But yeah, they especially Josh Allen has done a fantastic job this season of being the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. Minus 900, like I mentioned, for MVP this season. All right. My quarterback prop here, I'll say one for honorable mentions. I'm going to go to Brock Purdy over on his passing yards this week. They're going against the Miami Dolphins down in South Beach. And, I think this is more of a play where I think something similar to Justin Herbert we talked about for Thursday Night Football, Chris, that the running game really hasn't been healthy, especially for the San Francisco 49ers team, to say the least. No CMC, no Jordan Mason. I know Isaac Garindo is dealing with an injury as well. His status is up in the air. So, you're going to have to find a way to move the football in this game. And I think it's going to have to be a lot of Brock Purdy in this matchup for the for the San Francisco 49ers. You take a look at his numbers last week against the Rams, who only had 142 passing yards. So he's only gotten open over this number in 2 of the last 5 games. But I just like the matchup here, especially after last week not scoring a touchdown in that game. I think they come out here. The weather's not going to be a factor down there in South Beach in Miami. So I do think there's an opportunity here for him to go out and play some good football and throw the football all over the field. The best number right now, this number has been on the move significantly since last night when I handicapped it. It was around 234.5. You're seeing it all the way up to 241.5 right now. If you have access to Bet Rivers, there's still a 236.5 there, but consensus right now is around 241.5 to 243.5. So I see BetMGM, Bet365 have 241.5 here. Chris, I'll give that out for Brock Purdy in this game. Give me Brock Purdy over 241.5 passing yards.
Brock Purdy, I like him, just going back and kind of looking at his numbers for whatever reason. He's first of all, I like it. I like the script, like you said, right? We know that the Dolphins have been able to score the football throughout the season, specifically at home. And what happened to it, he's going to have to keep up. And you mentioned a lot of the weapons being out. Last 5 road games, for whatever reason, he is having a lot more success than he is at home. He's up and over the number 4 of his last 5 road games. Every game outside of the Buffalo game where he threw for just 94 yards. But 241, I see with the number being a 241, I see a 319 against Minnesota, 292 against the Rams. Seattle, he threw for 255, and then Tampa Bay, he also threw for 353. So you love to see that. Like you said, especially with the weather not being shouldn't be too much of an issue down in South Beach, So I like it. I like to look a lot for Brock Purdy this week. Any wide receiver you like to catch some of those, get some of those receiving yards?
No, I've talked about this a lot, and I think you and I have both talked about this a lot. It's really been George Kittle that's been the huge beneficiary as the player where Brock Purdy has been the starting quarterback of this team. Last week, he did have 61 receiving yards. Against the Bears, 151 yards for George Kittle. Not a big game, but that was a snow game against the Buffalo Bills. Not going to take anything away from that for George Kittle. But prior to that, 82 against the Packers, 57 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers there. So I think it's a good opportunity for possibly him to spread it around here a little bit. I know Juwan Jennings has been really good in the absence of some of their key guys on the offensive side. Deebo Samuel has been a shell of himself this season. This could be a big game for Juwan Jennings. I know last week he did get 9 targets, but only had 2 receptions for 31 receiving yards. But I think this is a good spot here for him to possibly get up and over his yardage for Juwan Jennings in this game. So those are maybe 2 guys I would target here for the 49ers side, at least for the offensive side here. All right, Chris, before we keep it rolling here, let me tell everyone about our good old friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Pick'em has one of the biggest menus of all sports. You can win up to 1,000x with Underdog Streaks. Underdog is available. And they always make it easier to win with Profit Boost and Gimme Pick'ems, NFL, college football, college basketball, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, and much more. You can now use boosts and specials on all flex entries. Stay tuned at the end of the episode. Chris and I will put together our Underdog Fantasy entry for the weekend games here for week 16. So sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code MACHINE. We're also brought to you by Rebet. Rebet is a new social sports book available in 45 states. There are plenty of betting opportunities that are available on Rebet. It's easy to use and great for people in states where traditional sportsbook may be restricted. Download Rebet in the App Store and use the promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit match up to $100. Again, that's promo code SGPN. All right, Chris, let's keep it rolling here. Let's get over to running back props in this week 16 games. Where are you taking us?
Tampa Bay, Dallas, we got to look at Bucky Irvin. How could we not? Up and over his 56.5 rushing yards. Right now, I see is the number. And this number is up a little bit on the move as well. I don't think it's going to close 56.5. See it up to 58.5 on a couple books as well. But BetMGM does have minus 115 last time I checked, about 30, 45 minutes ago. So I'm looking at Bucky Irvin, just killing it recently. He's been super efficient running back in the league. He's averaging 5.5 yards per carry this season. coming off a super dominant performance against the Chargers, where he rushed for 117 yards on 15 carries last week. And we got a Cowboys defense, run defense specifically, that's been a little bit vulnerable, a little bit susceptible to the run. They actually rank dead last in opponent rush EPA and 29th in opponent yards per carry. They're allowing really, really close to 5 yards per carry. And just in general, 29th in rushing yards allowed. I think the numbers are a tad bit too low for how well Bucky has been playing. You know, last week, like I mentioned, 117 against the Chargers. He did only have 3 against the Raiders 2 weeks ago, but we take that game out. There's 3 games in here, you know, where he has at least 73 yards, and these are against, I wouldn't say the greatest of defenses, but the San Francisco 49er defense is on here. He had 73 yards against them 4 weeks ago, and then he got a Giants defense that's, I would consider, a pretty comparable defense to Dallas. He had 88 yards in that game. He followed that up against another really poor rush defense in the Carolina Panthers and ran for 152 before 117 last week. You know, so I think the numbers just set a tad bit too low for Bucky right now, given how many rush attempts he's getting. He has 11.7 rush attempts per game, which is rush share is really, really big right now. He's getting the ball a lot. This is a very dynamic and explosive offense, and I think we continue to see well balanced. You know, with Baker being able to put the ball in the air, of course, there's wide receivers, but also handing it off to Bucky and running behind that offensive line. So I played Bucky Irvin up and over his 56.5 rushing yards this week here, you know.
Yeah, I couldn't talk you off. He's been really, really good, obviously, for this Tampa Bay backfield. I know they've been kind of going running by committee. I think I don't know if I know he's been dealing some knick-knack injuries over the past couple of weeks, but that didn't really come into effect at all last week against the Chargers. 117 rushing yards in that game, 152 against the Carolina Panthers, 88 against the Giants, 73 against the San Francisco 49ers. So I think they continue feeding him the ball here. 5.6 yards per carry as well. So I do think this is a good opportunity. I think this offense will have a lot of success in this game for the Dallas Cowboys, or against the Dallas Cowboys for the Tampa Bay Bucks defense. Offense, I should say. All right, for my running back prop, you mentioned how Bucky Irving's success, and it was against a particular team in the Carolina Panthers. I think I got to continue fading this Panthers defense here on the ground. James Conner over 83.5 rushing yards in this game. And this number is a big number for a reason. It's how bad this Carolina Panthers rush defense has been this season. They're allowing 141.5 rushing yards per game this season alone. And if we're going to want to go all the way back to week 9 against the Saints and work our way down from there, Alvin Kamara, 29 for 155. Tyron Tracy Jr., 18 for 103. Kareem Hunt, 16 for 68. Bucky Irving, we just talked about, 25 for 152. Saquon, 20 for 124. And then last week, Rico Dowdle, 25 carries, 149 yards on the ground. They're allowing 5 yards per carry on the ground there, Chris. I think it's a good opportunity for James Conner to really have a big week here for this Cardinals rushing attack. I'll take a look. Last week, he had 110 against the New England Patriots. He had 90 against the Seattle Seahawks. So he's done it in back-to-back weeks. Big advantage matchup in favor of James Conner here. I'll continue riding the hot hand here and him continuing to crush it on the ground. So best number right now for James Conner on the ground is, let's see here. I see a 82.5 at Bet Rivers, but consensus right now is 83.5. So I'll give you 83.5 rushing yards for Mr. James Conner.
I like that one. I mean, I hadn't thought about that, but that makes a ton of sense. You laid out the numbers, I think, really, really nicely, and he's kind of hitting his stride towards the end of the season, which is sometimes we don't see running backs do that. But I love the consistency over the last few weeks against the Seahawks and against New England, going up and over 90. And you mentioned this number being big for a reason. When James Conner has been a boom or bust type running back, either he gets 33 yards or he gets 90, right? It's really no in between. So the book set the number this high. I think they set it this high for a reason. I would agree with you, like James Conner this week.
All righty, let's get over to player prop number 3 here. Chris, what do you got?
All right, let's go New York, and I'll say that one for honorable mention. We'll come back to that one. Let's go Philly against my Washington Commanders this week. If I like AJ Brown, just to kind of keep it going, we saw 2 weeks ago he was, doing a little pouting, little wide receiver shenanigans on the sideline after the game. Short answers for the media, and then he of course has a big game last week, 110 yards against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they got the ball, and I think it was Jalen Hurts who came to the post-game podium, and said, "So that's what y'all wanted? Is that what we're looking for all week?" I think they keep it going against my Commanders. This Commanders defense is susceptible to the run, which should be able to open up some play action opportunities for Jalen Hurts in this Philadelphia offense. So the line for AJ Brown is 73.5 right now. At least that's what it was. I think it's still about there. He's averaging about 86 over the full season. Last 10 games, averaging 83 yards as well, 60% hit rate last 5. He's about 78 yards, which is up and over this. Been a little inconsistent, but home away splits 94.4 yards per game on the road. If you love that 80% hit rate on the road for AJ Brown in this spot. And I mentioned the Commanders defense a little bit, struggling against wide receivers. Brown, he's been the consistent deep threat. So I, of course, thought about playing his longest reception up and over. I think that number was 24 to 26.5, depending on where you were looking. But I like his ability to be able to create some separation here. He's been a reliable target for Jalen Hurts all throughout the season. We know he has big playability. So I play Jalen Hurts. If I think it's an 80-plus yard receiving yard week for AJ Brown this week. So up and over 73.5 for me.
Yeah. Usually when we see, the pouting, and we talked about this throughout the season, I think Jamar Chase early in the season, I think there's another couple guys in there as well, usually respond after that. And I think, last season when we, did the Propcast, that we had talked a lot about the secondary of the Commanders and, finding ways to exploit them. And the theme for me last year was taking quarterbacks for their longest completion to go over. And that was more profitable than not. But, he's had 5 games in his career against the Commanders as a player for the Philadelphia Eagles, 175 receiving yards, 130. He had 65 in the matchup earlier this season. The targets we know are going to continue to be there for AJ Brown. But yeah, I think that this is a good opportunity for him again to be or have another big game, I should say, against the Washington Commanders. All right, for my third player prop here, this one's a little chalky, but let me just double check because I feel like these odds have been on the move. If not, I can save it for honorable mentions here. But let's see. Let me just double check this number. I'll save it for honorable mention. So let's go to Brian Thomas Jr. I'll go up and over his number of receiving yards in this game against the Las Vegas Raiders. Consensus right now is 72.5 for Brian Thomas Jr. And just honestly a play here, Chris, about availability really for this Jacksonville Jaguars team. I know they're missing some top guys when it comes to the wide receiving group. Christian Kirk has been gone for the season. Gabe Davis has been missing time as well. And the really beneficiary of that in his rookie season has been Brian Thomas Jr. You take a look at what he's been able to do the last 4 weeks, 76 or more receiving yards in all 4 of those games. But what really sticks out to me, Chris, last 3 weeks has been the targets. 36 total targets over the last 3 weeks for Brian Thomas Jr. 26 of those came in the last 2 weeks alone. I think those targets will continue to being there from Mac Jones to Brian Thomas Jr. Again, you're going up against a team that's, let's be honest, they're in tank mode. They want to get one of those top quarterbacks coming out, whether it's Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. We've seen the clips of Mark Davis and Shedeur talking with each other. We've seen the signs in the stands by the fans, the Raider Stadium there and Allegiant Stadium. And I think this is a good opportunity here for Brian Thomas Jr. to continue what he's been able to do over the past several weeks. I know last week, I'm not sure how much we wanted to really take away from Kirk Cousins on Monday Night Football, not having a good game. But prior to that, I mean, they were giving it up through the air. 69 receiving yards for Mike Evans, 59 for Jalen McMillan in that game. DeAndre Hopkins had a 90 receiving yard game against the Raiders. We remember a few weeks back, Cortland Sutton, 97 yards, Devon Vele, 80 yards. So they're giving it up to the wide receiving group. So I think this is a good opportunity for Brian Thomas Jr. to continue doing what he's been able to do over the past 4 weeks here for the Jaguars. So Brian Thomas Jr. over 72.5 receiving yards here, Chris.
I love this, Munaf. And it starts for me with what you said with as far as the reception goes. I won't talk too much about Brian Thomas Jr. because I'll end up talking about him a little bit later. We'll say that.
All right, fair enough. So yeah, rounded out our 3, 4 this week, and let's now get into honorable mentions here. Chris, I'll let you lead it off, man.
All right, so let's go back to quarterback position here, Munaf. I'm looking at. Can you talk me on playing Mr. Lamar Jackson this week, Munaf? Up and over his longest rush. 15.5 yards is the number for Lamar this week, Munaf. Minus 115 over on Bet Rivers. A number that he's gone up and over in 60% of his last 5 games, 78% of his games this season. We know that when Lamar takes off, he's looking to pick up 20, 25, 30, 40, 45 yards sometimes. And against Pittsburgh, I think that he has the opportunity to do just that. He had a 25-yard rush earlier this season when he played against this same Pittsburgh defense. Pittsburgh's defense they have allowed the big play, specifically on play action, and sometimes they can struggle to contain mobile quarterbacks. So we know how elite of a rushing ability that Lamar has. And like I said, the Steelers defense, they've shown some weakness to quarterbacks who can scramble. So I do think that he's going to, make some plays, get down the field. I do expect, that offensive line to hold up for the most part, but at times I do expect pressure, some hurries to get to Lamar, and I do expect them to take off and use his legs like his mama told him a couple post games ago. So I like him up and over the number. Like I said, he's up and over back-to-back games. Last week he had a 21-yard run against the Giants. 2 weeks ago it was a 39-yard run against Philly. So he's up and over 3 of the last 4. And when he goes over 15.5, he typically gets to 20. So he does have 2, 18 and a 17, but those came earlier this season against Cincinnati and against Tampa Bay. But when Lamar typically takes off and he gets a long run, it's typically 20 yards or more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of the last 7, he's had a 20-yard rush or more. So 15.5, I felt like was a solid number. I really want to get there with Lamar up and over his longest rush of 15.5, And then I'll give you one more. That'll be, and I'm a little weary here, but I do think he could still cash me. It's Malik Neighbors. Receiving yards is sitting at 67.5 this week. We know that, they don't have the greatest quarterback situation going on right now, but this is a line for Malik Neighbors that, you got, first of all, you got the Giants playing the Atlanta Falcons, and that was a big part of it for me. The Falcons are allowing the most receiving touchdowns and the fourth most yards in general to the wide receiver position. They're super susceptible. Malik Neighbors specifically is up and over in 4 of his 5 road games this season. I mentioned Atlanta allowing the 6th most receiving yards, 3 straight weeks against Dallas, against New Orleans, and last week against Baltimore. He went up and over this number at 67.5. So really wanted to get there with him. We know that the target shares have been there. 7.5 receptions is what he's averaging on 11.5 targets over the last 10 games. 30% target share. He's getting the ball a ton. So kind of like Malik Neighbors didn't pull the trigger on him. Those are my 2 favorite honorable mentions. Looking at Lamar over his longest rush of 15.5, and then like I just said, looking at Malik Neighbors up and over 67.5 receiving yards.
So Lamar one makes me nervous, just because I feel like since Mike Tomlin and that defense has seen him a lot of times, they've been able to really contain him. I just kind of quickly went through the game log right now as you were talking about that. He's gone over that longest rush of 15.5 in back-to-back games, but it's only been in those 2 games in 7 career games against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, maybe he can get it done here, but I'd be on the sideline for that one for Lamar Jackson. I feel like this would be, I don't want to say a big Derrick Henry game, but it's just really hard to figure out like where the success on offense is going to come from for this Ravens team against this Steelers team in particular, just because they know each other very well, division rivals, of course, and we know the history behind these two teams. So I think I saw a note as well, Chris. I don't think that Lamar has played at home against the Steelers since I think like the 2020 season, if I'm not mistaken, which is kind of wild to think about because he's been the quarterback for there for so long. So, yeah, I'd be on the sideline for that longest rush one, but again, we know the ability that Lamar Jackson has. What was your other one you mentioned, Malik Neighbors?
Neighbors up and over 67.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, I was hoping that Tim Boyle would be the starting quarterback for the Giants in this game, just because he was feeding him the football last week when in that game for the Giants there. But this is going to be also a game where the Giants, we more than likely are not going to be playing from behind. They are an 8.5-point dog in this game. So I do think that you're going to have to find your best receiver out there in Malik Neighbors. One of my honorable mentions is in this game because it is Drew Lock. I like his rushing yard to go over in this game. I think the number was 17.5 for Drew Lock. It's a very small sample, but the 2 starts that he has made for the New York Giants, Chris, he has had 50 plus rushing yards, and he's gotten it done in 1 carry in each of those games. I think long of 25 or more yards in both of those starts there for the New York Giants. So that was what I was looking at. Obviously, whether or not a concern playing in Atlanta inside the dome. So I was looking at that one. Baker Mayfield passing yards against the Dallas Cowboys. We know how bad the secondary has been. I know they're dealing with some injuries there as well. Being back in Texas where he's from, familiar obviously with the state of Texas, did play his ball in Oklahoma. So maybe he's talked a lot about how he felt slighted by the University of Texas that they didn't recruit him, being a guy from Texas. And I think that's something that's always carries with you, no matter where you are. But I think just looking at it from an X's and O standpoint, we know how bad this secondary is for the Dallas Cowboys and how bad they've been at home this season. So I did look at Baker Mayfield. I wanted to give out Mike Evans here, Chris. The number opened up at 68.5 on his receiving yards. It's all the way up to 80.5, Chris. So I couldn't give it out, especially when the line has moved that much for a guy like Mike Evans. But we know that he's vying for the consecutive streak of 1,000 receiving yards in his career. We know that narrative. He also has a couple of contract incentive bonuses. We'll talk about that next week. I really love this time of year when we talk about contract incentive bonuses for player performances. But he needs, I believe it's 267 receiving yards, 18 receptions, and 1 more touchdown to unlock a $3 million bonus. And there was a press conference earlier this week with Baker, and Baker mentioned that Baker himself is thinking more about Mike Evans' 1,000 receiving yard streak than actually Mike Evans is. So when a quarterback typically says that, Chris, the emphasis, I think, we'll see that this week over the past couple of weeks here, or the final weeks, I should say, for Mike Evans in this game. So I still played it at the opening number. I just didn't want to give it out on the pod because the number has gotten away. Does he get 100 receiving yards in this game against Dallas? Is it a possibility? Absolutely. So if you still want to play it, I couldn't talk you off of it. I really did like Mike Evans this week. I tweeted out as soon as the number dropped. So those are one I was looking at. Chris, get your thoughts on that. Drew Lock on his rushing yards, Mike Evans, and Baker Mayfield passing yards as well.
Baker's been absolutely on fire. Every time I feel like I see him throw the ball, I feel like it's going to be a touchdown. So that's what I'll say about him. We talked a little bit about Mike Evans coming back. That's been 3 4 weeks ago. And we talked about how he needed to, get to we gave out the number. I forgot how many yards he needed to average to make sure he was going to solidify another 1,000-yard season. So, with this being, crunch time for both of those guys, I couldn't, let's just say this. I would love to have the pairing of those two guys on my fantasy football team this week. And Drew Lock, I feel like with the number, with him not, having that many starts this year, I feel like you always find the quarterback that is in the buy low spot, and you end up cashing before the markets could just adjust. So I do think you're getting a decent number, decent price there. So yeah, I think I like all your player props, all your honorable mentions this week.
All right, before we get into touchdown scores for this week, let's quickly talk about our good old friends over at mybookie.ag. Look, if you haven't been around my SGPN, MyBookie has actually been around for years with SGPN. Check out their new and improved website. It's great on mobile, plus props for every game and the live dealer casino as well. They even have a new early cash out option available. Definitely going to be looking at building a prop build out here for this Dallas Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Sunday Night Football game over on mybookie.ag. So come join the fun. Just use that promo code SGPN because they're going to give you a 100% deposit match of up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip. That's mybookie.ag. Use that promo code SGPN. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. SGPN's proud partner Rhythm is the #1 AI-powered back sports betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive betting models in seconds and get predictions for betting on money lines, spreads, totals, and props. Build your own model, copy one of the top-performing models from the leaderboard, or have Rhythm build a model for you. Now you can track props in the Rhythm app, NFL picks, NFL props, college football, college basketball, NBA. Rhythm has it all. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right, Chris, let's get into our touchdown scores for this week, and then we'll wrap it up with best bets and a underdog fantasy entry here. Who do you like to find the end zone?
We talked about this guy last week. I think I talked about him 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to continue to talk about him. Already talked about him on the show. Josh Allen. Anytime touchdown is now not plus money anymore. Enough. I see that -110 over on Bet365. But I mean, like, I'm not sure how much I need to say, but let's just say he's been on fire recently, accounting for 10 total touchdowns, 5 passing, 5 rushing in his last 2 games. The Bills have scored 30 plus points in 8 straight games, and Josh Allen has been key to, red zone, a big red zone threat in general. 28 red zone touchdowns this season, 20 passing and 8 rushing. I do think that he's going to find pay dirt again this week. You got a Patriots defense that's allowed 32 red zone touchdowns. They're tied for the 3rd most in the NFL. His ability to be dual threat, we know what Josh Allen does. So I do like him to be able to find the end zone again this week with his dual threat ability. One minus money wide receiver, and one plus money wide receiver. So minus, I just love the wide receiver more than I love the price. So I'm buying the wide receiver, not necessarily the price. But Jamar Chase, anytime touchdown. He gets a Cleveland Browns defense this week. It's -140, which is the most juice I've laid for anytime touchdown in a while. But simply put, Jamar Chase leads the NFL in receptions, 102 on the season. Receiving yards, 1,413, and receiving touchdowns, 15, making him by far the #1 wide receiver in the league. You got a Browns defense that ranks 30th in yards allowed per game. They struggle to contain elite wide receivers. Joe Burrow is in pretty good form right now. He's thrown 21 touchdowns in his last 6 games. Jamar Chase, of course, is his go-to target. So really like Jamar Chase a lot. And then plus money, you talked about this guy, Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars, +165 on FanDuel. Standout rookie wide receiver, 86 plus scrimmage yards in each of his last 4 games with increased target volume. Because you mentioned the targets. I think you said 12 targets. What was it? It was more than that. It was what, 24?
He's had 36 over the last 3 weeks and 26 over the last 2 weeks.
That's what it is. Yeah. And you got a Raiders defense that's been absolutely putrid. Most completions of 20 plus yards this season, so he thrives in those vertical routes. I couldn't talk anybody off a Brian Thomas Jr. longest reception prop is either. I do think that they'll continue to force feed him, and I love it at +165, So we'll go Brian Thomas Jr., we'll go Jamar Chase and Josh Allen this week for myself.
I like it. All right, I'll start off here with I thought the Bijan number would be a lot lower than it is, but he's at -215. I saw Jahmyr Gibbs sitting at -300 this week.
I saw Derrick Henry sitting about same. That's why I left him off the list.
Jalen Hurts, we'll start there. -120. It is a minus price. Definitely shop around. Maybe there's some even money odds out there, but we know about the tush push and Jalen Hurts scoring touchdowns there. So I think that's a good look this week. We have DeAndre Swift against the Lions, his former team. Sometimes we typically see players want to give it to their former team. That's at +125. Could be a big week for him as well. My guy Nico sitting at +165, currently over on DraftKings. I know Mahomes is going to be playing in this game, but I think that this is an opportunity for CJ Stroud to find his guy here, Nico Collins, +165. And I think that's pretty much, or I'll have to find, let me go to that Niners and the Dolphins game because I do think either Jawan Jennings or George Kittle is able to find the end zone here. Kittle +165. I do like that. And then Jawan Jennings is sitting at +180 as well. So I'll throw those four guys at you here to find the end zone. All right, Chris, let's get into best bets here for this week, and then we'll wrap it up with an underdog fantasy entry. Where are you taking us for your best bet?
I think I got to go back to the Tampa Bay game. If I know you talked a lot about the quarterback wide receiver dynamic, but Bucky Irvin, I just feel like 56.5 is extremely low here. So we'll go Bucky Irvin up and over his 56.5 rushing yards here against like we talked about it, a really poor Cowboys defense. They did play a little bit better against the run last week, but they still ranked 29th in yards allowed. Bucky Irvin's absolutely on fire, crushing this number in 4 of his last 5 games, almost double in 4 of his last 5 games. So we'll go Bucky Irvin to stay hot in this game against the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, for my best bet, let's go with Brock Purdy. I like Purdy this week to go over his passing yards. Consensus right now sitting at, like I mentioned, around 242.5. Think he walks into 250 here. I think Patrick Taylor Jr. is going to get the start here for the San Francisco 49ers running back room. But I do think that, whether or not being a factor here, just offensively struggling last week for this team, I think there's an opportunity for him to go out and have a really good game here. So I'll go with Brock Purdy over on his passing yards. That number is consensus right now, like I mentioned, sitting at around 242.5. So let's go Brock Purdy this week. All right. Before we wrap it up here, let's get into our underdog fantasy entry here for this week. Again, underdogfantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code NBA. Use that promo code machine over at Underdog Fantasy. You'll get a first-time deposit offer of up to 50% of up to $1,000. So again, get over there, underdogfantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code NBA. SGPN, or you could use the machine, or use machine over at Underdog Fantasy as well. All right, so let me get over to the NFL tab here. We'll go with our best bet. So I'm going to go Brock Purdy. Passing yards are currently sitting at, 240. So great number there from Underdog. And then Chris, what did you have for your best bet?
We'll go Bucky Irvin over his 56.5 rushing yards.
All right, Bucky Irving, his number's at 58.5, so good number there. We'll go higher on that. And then I really like Mike Evans this week. I'll throw him in there. I don't think the number's out yet for him on. Oh yeah, it is. It's at 78.5, so we'll go with that. All right, cool. So our entry this week, we'll go Brock Purdy higher 240.5 passing yards, Bucky Irving higher 58.5 rushing yards, and Mike Evans higher 78.5 receiving yards. That $10 entry will get you a return of $60. So 6x entry. Come join the fun. Underdogfantasy.com. Use that promo code machine. 50% deposit bonus of up to $1,000. All right, that's going to wrap it up here for this edition of the NBA. I don't know why I keep saying NBA. Just going to finish the NBA show right now. I think that's just what it is. But of the NFL Propcast for week 16 here. Should be a lot of fun this weekend. Games on Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Definitely looking forward to the weekend here with all the action across all the sports here. Chris, anything else you want to mention to our listeners before we get out of here?
Nah, man, enjoy week. What week are we in? Week 16.
16, yeah.
Yeah, enjoy week 16, man. Bet responsibly, as we always, ask you guys to do so. Manage your bankroll, and we will see you guys next week.
Yep, we'll be back next week for the Christmas week. Forgot the schedule. Definitely want to get something out for sure before the Christmas Day games. Then we back later in the week for NFL Week 17. So look out for us then. All right, appreciate everybody that does listen to us. If you can do us a huge favor, leave us a rating and review, whether it's on Spotify, whether it's on Apple. Would truly appreciate if you guys could do that for us. And if you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel here for the Propcast, I would definitely appreciate if you guys can do that for us as well. All right, we'll talk to you guys next week. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you guys down the road. But always remember to let it ride.